Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review number 800. Today we're going to talk about Lanzerath Ridge. This is a game from Dan Viersen Games, designed by David Thompson and Niels Johansson. And this is, I think, the latest, or almost the latest, in the Valiant Defense series of games. I believe right now there's 4 games in the series, with another one coming soon. This is the only one that I played so far. It's a series that I've kind of noticed over the years, but just, for whatever reason, haven't got a chance to try any of them. And this one looked interesting, so I gave it a shot. And what it is a solitaire game, although in this one there are rules for 2-player. I've not tried it, I've just played solitaire. And it's a real historical event during kind of the beginnings of the somewhat famous Battle of the Bulge during World War II. And this is sort of the opening salvo of that, just in some degree. I'm not an expert on the history, not even a little bit. But what interesting thing about this is a solitaire game. It's kind of a tower defense game in a way, almost like a States of Siege game in a way, but not really. There's some other nuances there. And one thing that that is interesting is it has named people. So the little counters for your squad or squads that you will control, you've got the names of the real historical folks that were involved. And there's some nice good background information there in that regard. And the game also does present, I'll talk about a little bit of this, probably more in the review and a little bit on the table, different sort of, call it alternate history sort of things. Maybe it gives you different ways to kind of set it up in different ways, and it gives you kind of the context for what happened during the real battle, and it gives you that kind of right up front in the rules. And there's also a little bit of I'll call it flavor text, some more exposition in the back that kind of gets into the history a little bit more, but it does give you sort of a reference point to jump off from, and like I said, in terms of the context of what this particular event was about in reality, and then kind of taking that expectations into your gameplay, which again offers a couple of different modes. So let's go down to the table, and then I'll come back and give you my thoughts. Okay, so I've got the board here, how it might look at setup, and you can see it's kind of this like hillside, this sort of ridge that goes up into this forested area, and this is where the Allied forces were sort of entrenched. A couple of things you can note there's various different counters, which I'll talk about. Some vehicle counters up there, those circular ones, those big circular ones, and then the little ones here are machine gun ammunition, which will run out over the course of the game, and so you need to conserve that. Then you have these little pathways up here where the German forces are coming up through these different routes to try to kind of sack your location. So you got some flanks over here, and then as well over here on this side, kind of sneaking in through the forested area there. And they will always set up each round. It's played over the course of 4 rounds in this particular case here. So you can see these are just some simple riflemen. It might also spawn some other types of folks here. You got the machine gunners there. You might have a leader, and so on. And what the number is at the bottom here is the amount of attack dice they will roll. When it gets focused, it will roll that many attack dice, and then when they get into their sort of kind of a hand-to-hand melee style combat. Otherwise, what you're trying to do is pick them off before they can get up to your little entryways there. And you can see each of the spaces here that they're next to has a little sort of icon, a symbol with a number next to it. So that's kind of the defense value of that particular location. And so depending on the location that your sort of characters are at, they're going to need to hit a different number. So you can see this is like a brown box. So if we go up here, we can see these locations there, and so on. Those have a brown box. So anything that has a brown box can see a spot that has a brown box. Now other places can also see this. So you have this kind of purple or blue hexagon. So if we take a peek up top here, you can see this particular truck here has a machine gun mounted on it. It's got the purple hexagon there, so it can see everything that's out in the field. So it can see a lot more spaces, but depending on where it is out here, the 2-hit number, the sort of armor number, is going to vary a little bit. And then like this guy here, we can see there, you can see they have the brown box or the orange hexagon there, so they can see either. And like I mentioned, the game is going to last you 4 rounds. So you can see we've got 4 little decks of cards here. So this will be the cards that you have to go through for the attackers. Okay, this is the round 1 attackers card. The way the turn's going to work is you're going to flip over 3 of these cards one at a time, and this is going to tell you what the Germans are going to do. So this one, they're going to place a machine gun down or activate it if it's already placed. This one here, we're going to add a leader to a particular track and so on. So you're going to do 3 of these, and then you're going to get a turn to sort of react to that. Then if you make it all the way through round 1, you're going to reset the board up. You're going to reset the board up like you see here. Maybe move some of your tokens around, kind of reshuffle them, reposition them. The rules do give you kind of a historical suggestion about how generally these different waves or attacks are going to react. So over time, the Germans are going to start to head towards the flanks on either side a little bit, or they're going to be, maybe this particular round, they're going to be a little bit heavier on the machine gun fire and so on. And then you also notice in rounds 3 and 4, you'll have an objective. So in round 3, you'll have 1 objective. This one's not going to score you any points. You can see it's 0, but it is going to behoove you to deal with this objective. Basically, the gist of it is, kind of leave it for you to discover, but the other side is going to have some medics in disguise. One of them is going to be a forward observer, which you can see there. That one you want to take out because it will give a bonus to their machine gun fire. And so that's an objective there. Now you will have 2 objectives in round 4 here, and these will give you points at the end of the game. See, 3 and 2 points. And this is a way to kind of get a couple of people out of dodge, take the equipment so the Germans cannot capture it, and then also, you know, have some folks escape and sort of let everybody else know what's happening, because that's going to help the overall war effort. So if you complete those objectives, those are optional, but they will score you extra points. Now, to win the game, you've got to last all 4 rounds. If you last into the 4th round, it's effectively a draw. And then depending on how many points that you score, if you last all the way through, you'll get kind of various different sort of victories, like a supreme victory, you know, whatever, those kinds of things. Now, the other way that you get points besides these objective cards is this track here. You can see there's kind of 2 things we're tracking. One, we're tracking morale. One, we're tracking intelligence. So over the course of the game, you can take actions to sort of radio intelligence back to headquarters, so to speak. And wherever this ends up, you're going to get that many extra points there. So that's a way to score points. Although that's kind of like what we like to call a nice to have. So if you're going to spend actions getting intelligence, that's great. You're in a good position, but maybe you should focus on the, you know, horde of Germans that are trying to assault your hillside. Now, the thing that will get you to lose is if your morale ever drops to 0. That's one of the ways that you can lose. So if the morale ever hits 0, then you will instantly lose at that point. The other thing that will happen is if at the end of the round, if we just kind of scooch down here a little bit, and there is a German in one of these sort of boxes, defense boxes, and if there's a German in there at the end of the round at all, in any of them, then you instantly lose, because basically they've punched a hole through defenses, and then they will be able to fortify from here, and then, you know, basically wipe everybody out there and take over the whole structure, the whole lodge that's there. So I don't want to get too rules heavy about, you know, spawning these guys. I just want to kind of tell you some general things. Normally they'll kind of like stack up here against barbed wire. Once you get a stack of 3, then they'll push through, or if there's a leader that gets spawned and they start to bunch up here, that will automatically push through. You will start the game here with these kind of like booby traps. These will not replenish at all once they're used up, so the first kind of soldier that moves into them will go with it. They'll both destroy each other. You will replenish the barbed wire at the start of each round. And then also the other thing that the Germans will do is place these machine guns. So you can see this goes into position B. So there's little boxes down here, which we'll just zoom in on here. And you saw the one card I showed you to put it at B. So these will be in spots, and you can see these have their own defense value there. And so they can be destroyed, and they will do fair bits of damage to you if and when they do activate. So that's something you'll want to kind of handle as well. But so the game will spawn those. And so if you have a board full of those, you know, in these different little box parts, then you can expect to take a lot of fire. So it's good to kind of tap these back and get them out of the way so they're not doing a lot of harm to you. But I'll show you a couple more rules. Real quickly, the rule book is great. I think it's a good production, nice illustrations, very clear, all that stuff. It does give you some nice supplements here. So on the attacker phase, this is basically when you draw the cards for the Germans, they're going to do one of these three things. And it explains it very clearly. You don't even need to see the rule book anymore. And then there's a couple of like keywords and stuff that are on this one. And then as the player, you have major actions and then you have minor actions. Okay, so a minor action, anybody can do that, and you get basically 5 action markers that you can do. So you're going to flip 3 cards, take 5 actions, flip 3 cards, take 5 actions. You notice these are cubes. Well, the game does an interesting thing. It gives you cubes to track things. So where I had machine gun tokens up there, you could just use different colored cubes that match those. And you can see I have the little cardboard action markers here. There's also some extra tokens in there for playing some kind of different scenarios and setups. I like to use the cubes here because you're going to be placing action markers on the different guys that you're going to activate, and then you're going to pull these off when you're done, and you're going to be pushing and pulling these a lot, so it's just easier to use a cube in that case instead of trying to meat hook the the little cardboard tokens off. So that's kind of a nice option. You have the variability there. So when you take an action, a minor action, you'll just take the thing and say, okay, he did that. Now if you take a major action, you're going to flip the token over to the exhausted side, so they can no longer do anything until they are unexhausted. Okay, but each person can only do one thing per action round. That's why you mark them there. So as you can see, there's a fair bit of actions there, right, on each of these sheets, but it's not really so overwhelming. First thing you can do, let's just take a look at one of these here. So here we can shoot, right? And so we have here, this is not focusing there. That's a D6 on him. He's not so great at a shot, but Krieger here, he is a D8. So you can see there he's got a D8, and that just shows the die that you roll. And there's several different dice. There's D6s, D8s, D10s, D12s. Some of the machine guns roll D12s. And so you'll take the appropriate dice, and then you'll take aim. And then again, you have a target to hit number. Now the interesting thing is, so if I pair this guy with this leader here, he's going to show some inspiration. So this star here will mean he can be inspired, and so he can roll 2 of whatever his attack value is while he's in the same box there. And then you also have these captains and these other folks that can do assisting. And so what happens when you, let's say I activated this guy here, this other guy can assist, so he can assist and then unexhaust this one, so this will come back up. Whereas the various different captains and stuff, I should say they're not really captains, they have the command here. So if we look there, that guy's the command. So when he flips, he can flip up to 3 others that are exhausted in this space and adjacent spaces and get them to reactivate. It's because remember, you have to last through this whole deck. So, if everybody shoots once and then you don't have any way to sort of reactivate everybody, you're going to be just sitting ducks. The other thing to note here is you've got these guys here with the M, which allows them to operate the machine guns, but also adjust the fire. And so you can take multiple shots with the machine gun and hit multiple spaces. So for each space that you shoot, you're going to increase the defense of the next one by 1. So if we look down here, let's say we tried it in this situation. So let's say we're going to spend 4 shots. And we say, okay, well, I'm going to spend maybe 2 here and 2 here. So I'd roll, let's say the machine gun was a D10, I'd roll 2 D10s, need a 5. The next 2 would go here, but since it's my second adjustment, so I shoot there and then there, instead of a 6, this will be +1 to a 7. Or let's say I wanted to daisy chain it up here, and for some reason do like 1 shot on each with all 4. So that would be a 4 to hit, a 6 to hit, that'd be +2, so 8 to hit, that'd be +3, so it'd be a 10 to hit, so it'd be more difficult. But you might, if you get lucky, take out more in a stack there. And if they are stacked, because I remember they said they stack up before that, you'll just take the top one off the stack. And so that'd be a readjustment to kind of fire twice there. The other thing to keep in mind is if you do fire more than the 3 shots there, because you'll spend the ammo out of these spots here, then you'll have to roll to see if you overheat the weapon. And then for each shot over 3, you're going to roll a D6. And then if you roll 1, that weapon is overheated and then removed from the game. So you got to be a little bit careful of that. You can't just use that. And the other thing, keep in mind, is you do have the action to be able to reload. Here you can see that will reload from the active 2 shots from this pool of 4. So this has a capacity of 2, whereas this machine gun over here, it's got a capacity 6 and there's 12 left over. So you can take an action to reload that, but they will reload in between rounds. You also will notice here, there's no machine gun in there. That's sort of like an optional rule or just a variant scenario to actually use that machine gun. The way you look at it here is the historical sort of setup. And the rules do tell you this basically ended in like a stalemate. I can't remember the exact words it used. Basically a stalemate, but defeat for the Allied troops. And then, but they were able to get, some of this intelligence communications and and basically evac all of the vehicles and guns and get a couple of folks away to escape that did not end up getting killed or captured by the Germans there. And so I think the last thing to talk about here is, so you might get what we'll call disrupted, okay? So we'll put a disrupt token on him. So he can get disrupted a few different ways. A lot of times with machine gun fire, artillery fire, if one of these guys comes in here and then they're not able to fight them off in hand-to-hand combat, then he's going to be disrupted. At the end of the round, then any disrupted soldier there is going to decrease morale there by 1. So it's going to go down by 1. So you want to try to recover them. So you can take a recover action and that will remove that disruption. So that's the way that you kind of will lose morale and end up losing the game. And that's actually the only action that you can take. So if you are disrupted, then the only thing you can do is, if you want to do an action with that character, is recover. They can't shoot or move or do anything because you can move. You can also, like again, I don't want to get all steep in lots of rules here, but you can move adjacently for a minor action. If you move more than 1, you can move it anywhere you want, but that will exhaust your character. That can be important if you've got somebody to unexhaust them, because if you want to get them, they start hitting this one flank really hard, and if they move in and there's no characters there, they're just going to sit there. So you've got to get over there and take them out again, or else you're going to lose the game. Or if you've got a bunch of exhausted people or people that have been disrupted and so on. So you've really got to start to watch how these sort of different attack sort of styles, if you will, work through the game, and you'll kind of learn that as you go. Now the other thing I want to talk about here is I want to talk about these tactic cards and just kind of show them to you. Now this is what you would consider an optional sort of advanced rule. So there's tactics here for each of the rounds. And what you do, there's kind of 2 ways to play it. There's a really hard way and a kind of hard way. So you'll take some out of here, but then you'll flip over a tactic card to go with the 3 cards that you flip there. And that will sort of enhance one of the abilities in here. So you can see this one. Let's give an example. After resolving a grenadier card, place a second one. That's basically what that says. So if you have a card in that main deck that spawns a grenadier, normally you just spawn one, but this is sort of like a little variant for that particular round that says, hey, whenever you spawn a grenadier, you're going to spawn 2. And these are keyed in to kind of generally work with the cards in that particular round's deck. So sometimes you'll flip these cards and it won't have any bearing on what you're doing, and that you breathe a sigh of relief. So I would say, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's noticeable. It's not nothing. So, but when nothing does happen, you're like, oh good, thank God. So again, you go through these, and then in the really, really advanced game, which I haven't tried, you do 2 of these at a time, which, whatever. No thanks. But like I said, you last through the 4 rounds. You try to, not have morale seek down to 0, or, have one of these guys that's living in one of these starting quarters there. Reset every round, basically. Reload. You've got ammo to really conserve. That's kind of your main resource. And then, the positioning of everything, and kind of learning, again, how these different attack decks are going to work round to round. Okay, so that's a little bit about Lanzerath Ridge. Let's go into my pillars of review. First pillar I usually talk about is play count. Now this is a solo game. There is rules for 2-player. I glanced at the rules a couple of weeks ago. I don't really remember them, but it seems like it might work. But as a solo only game, this is really good. Sort of sort of spoiler for the end of this review. I really, really enjoyed it. So the next pillar, we'll get that out of the way, is playtime. Box is 75 minutes. I'd say that's about right. And that will kind of lead me into my next last pillar, which is like, what is this game like? It's interesting because when the first couple times I played it 3 times now, it was a little strange because like the first couple of rounds are easy, right? Like you're not really going to be in danger of losing the game, I don't think. I mean, I think it's probably possible because I did have a situation, I think it was in the first or second round on one of my early plays where I was like, oh, I need to not be ignorant of what's going on over here. I need to pay more attention. And I could see like if the dice like just completely shut off on you, it's feasible that you could lose, in the first round maybe, or the second round. But it's pretty easy, I think, generally, once you get the hang of it, right? Once you get the hang of all the attack vectors and how things kind of work and the pacing, the first couple of rounds are going to be pretty easy, even the third round. Now, the fourth round is going to be where you start getting kicked in the teeth. So I was kind of thinking like, why play the first 3 rounds of this game? But then I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't just use all my machine gun fire in the first round, right? Like that's a bad move. You want to save it because you're really going to need it in the fourth round, right? And you really want to try to focus on like trying to keep those booby traps in place. Because if you just sort of carelessly let those booby traps get consumed, then again, when you do get in a pinch, then they won't be there when you need them. Which does actually set up an interesting dynamic in kind of the long arc of more of a strategic arc as opposed to a more, immediate tactical kind of feel where you're like, okay, if I can really focus on, keeping this piece here and that piece there, but do it in a way where I'm thinking long term for that fourth round. So maybe I let things go and I'm really trying to kind of push my luck. Because as that deck starts to go down, I'm like, okay, well, I know what's going to happen is we're going to reset after this. So I can maybe, not focus so much on where it looks like it's dangerous, but it's not because you're going to reset it. But if things go sideways for you, it might hit you in the face anyway. So that's a kind of interesting sort of tactical sort of long game that happens there. And that's a lot of fun, and, maybe you take a morale hit. Because you're like, I really don't want to take a morale hit. But it's like, no, you're trying to save your resources. So if you hit the morale, this is like a juggling bit that goes on there. So anyway, that's where I was kind of getting with, it felt a little strange to me because, it sort of, on the immediate plays of the game, it felt like, well, I'm just wasting my time. I should just queue up for the fourth round and then just go that way. Now, the other way that I think is to me is the way to play the game. Now, I have beaten it with the standard, just out of the box, like vanilla rules, and I've lost that way too. So in the game that I won, I think I scored like 4 points or something. I got one of the objectives, and then like a little bit of intelligence. So it was a low score though. I think the max you get is like 15 or 16 or something like that. So it was like I eked it out barely. And then I said, oh, let me try with that first level of tactics cards. And I think to me that is kind of the way to play. I don't know that I would play that way for your first game for sure. I don't think I would recommend that, but I like that, what that kind of does to the game. To me, that adds a little bit of that spice to it, and it makes those earlier rounds a little bit more dangerous and a little bit more interesting in that way. So again, I really like playing with those tactics cards, and I've not yet experimented with some of the other scenarios because it's kind of cool because it doesn't like overly belabor a lot of the history, but it does it in a way that I think that's, I'm not sure how to say this right, but it treats me like I'm not dumb. So it'll have a couple of scenarios where it's like, hey, this will make it easier, this will make it harder, and the reason this is because, oh, these guys actually, in real life, they never made it back to the ridge, and were, so they didn't have them at their disposal, or these guys did come back and maybe they didn't, you don't use them and that kind of stuff. And there's some other different setups, like this machine gun was here and, it wasn't in real life and that stuff. So you can see one of the things that's interesting about playing historical war games is seeing sometimes how a small thing can have sort of butterfly effect in a sense for the outcomes of things. And so this lets you really kind of tinker with that at that level, which really kind of marries itself nicely with the fact that everybody has a name. And I really like that part of this, where it's not just like, artillery guy X and private Zero and all these different things. You've got these guys, and so you kind of get to know, like, oh, this guy's really good at the machine gun. Jenkins is a dead eye with the machine gun, and so it's like he's very, very inspirational and that kind of thing. So it just, theme wise, it really kind of pulls you in. And so yeah, that's the game. Kind of fun. 800th review from a DVG game, which I have not reviewed in a long time. I still have somewhere. Here it is. I still have my Phantom Leader, which I haven't broken out in a while. But it was one of the first reviews I did way back 15 years ago almost. And so it's kind of cool to see these guys. And I want to check out some of the others in the Valiant Defense. If people have recommendations of the next one, let me know. And then also, I need to try the B-17 Leader. I keep thinking about that one. But yeah, I haven't seen really much. I know these guys are still around and stuff, doing things all the time, but I just haven't been keyed into it. And I really enjoy this. David Thompson, if you're not familiar, he does the Undaunted games, which I've reviewed almost all of them. So it was cool to see this. And then, I did do what was it called? For Enemy Within or something. And DVG put that out. It was a couple years ago. I forgot about that. Another David Thompson game. But I really like this series. I looked at some of the others, and they look very interesting. It's kind of a States of Siege idea like this, but there's like a little bit more to it. Like it doesn't really feel like just a tower defense. I kind of alluded to that at the beginning, where you could call it tower defense, you could call it States of Siege, but there's enough more kind of going on here that it's not as basic as some of those. Although some of those are really good. I still got a couple, speaking of old games, tucked away in some boxes here. Yeah, it's in that vibe, and I haven't played this kind of style of game, in the years. So it's been a nice little refresher. So I think a little bit, appropriate for an 800th review. So anyway, thanks.